Hey, welcome everybody. Isn't it nice we're having weather? We don't know where spring went all of a sudden, but I guess we'll endure this and wait till it turns off nicer. That was the story that Noah had to deal with as well, with the catastrophe that came on the face of the earth. We're talking about God's story, which is our story, and how He created all things, and then man corrupted all things with his sin. And because the corruption got worse and worse and worse, finally God has to destroy everything, every living creature, and begin anew with Noah and his family. What a tremendous story it is to see how God is still patient enough to wait and to restart things to where people can find a relationship with Him. The corruption got worse and worse and worse, as we read there in Genesis chapter 6, and it finally culminated in Genesis 6:3, where He says that the Spirit of God would no longer strive with man. God had had enough, and He was going to destroy everything except for Noah and his family. And He obviously had Noah start things all over again. And the flood was an amazing thing that God used. And in fact, He said He would never do that ever again. The last time it's going to be destroyed, the earth will be destroyed, or refined is a better word, by fire. And we'll be back to the Garden of Eden. And we're going to be talking about that in just a few weeks as we finish out this series. This is the first mention of grace in the Bible. It says Noah found favor or grace in the eyes of the Lord. For the rest of the 66 books, grace is going to be the overriding factor of how God deals with mankind. Will He punish sin? Most certainly He will. But that's not His heart. His heart is He wants to forgive. He wants people to come to Him, return to Him, repent, and live their life according to God's will. God is not going to ignore sin. And what I find amazing is that Noah preached for 120 years while he's building the ark, and did not have one decision. Not one person was willing to accept the message. But I bet when it started to rain, everything began to turn differently on the people as they saw the water beginning to rise. And now all of a sudden they're wanting in the ark. But obviously God had shut the door. There will come a time when God says, that's it, no more. I will no longer strive with man. And we see that God brings this catastrophe in the flood on the earth. There's over 100 different flood stories around the world that talk about a complete devastation. There's only one place that could have come from. It had to come from Noah and his family, and as they began to spread out over all the earth, those stories were a part of what man was doing and involved in. And so the ark itself was capable of holding over 15,000 animals. Now you wonder how all those animals got in that ark. If you ever get to visit the ark over there in Kentucky, you'll find out that there was plenty of room inside that ark. And Noah wouldn't have taken full-sized animals. He would have taken babies. Most animals are going to recreate or procreate in about a year or so, and so it wouldn't have been any difficulty at all for him to just take the babies along, and then they would grow up and begin to process the population of the earth. The ark was capable of holding 1,400,000 cubic feet. That would be the equivalent to 250 railroad boxcars. So it's an enormous ship. And you wonder, how could the flood cover the whole earth with Mount Everest and all of that? Well, before the flood, Mount Everest wouldn't have been as tall as it was. The flood helped recreate the earth. It made a deeper basin in the ocean, and it made a higher elevation of the mountains as the water ran off. And it didn't go completely away, but it repositioned itself on the earth. If you reduce the earth in size to where it was flat, there's enough water on the planet right now to cover the earth 1.7 miles. And so it's not a stretch to think at all about the heavens opening up and the earth opening up and water deluging along with the water that was already here, and the earth is completely covered by water. And so Noah found himself being saved by the ark. That is a beautiful picture of God's grace. Over in 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 21, it says, "Even now doth baptism save you." And the "even now" was a reference to Noah and the ark. Just like Noah and his family were saved by water. You say, "I thought they were saved by the ark." No, it was the water that caused the ark to float, and it separated life from death. And so you have the understanding that it was through the water that God saved Noah and his family. And then he says, "Even so doth baptism now save you." Not the washing away of the filth of the flesh of the outside of the body, but an answer towards God, asking God to refresh us, recreate us, forgive us. Baptism is that picture of the washing away of the old and the resurrection of the new. As Romans chapter 6 says it, "Don't you know that all of us that have been baptized into Christ have been baptized into his death? We were buried therefore by baptism into death, that like Christ was raised from the dead, so we would walk in a newness of life." God used Noah as an example of how he was going to save us in the church. I hope your discussion questions tonight just help you think deeper about this story and how God used it to start over, and how he still has the desire to give grace to everybody here on the earth. God bless and have a great discussion.